Today I'm going to talk about finding your artistic voice. And this is one of my favorite photography topics. I think it's something that relates to everybody, no matter if you're at the beginning of your journey or towards the end of it. So I was doing the math a few weeks ago when I was working on this presentation and realized that I have been shooting for 17 years. 14 of those years have been with clients. I've been taking clients for 14 years. I've been teaching photography for 8 years. And I crunched the numbers and realized I've spent over 25,000 hours taking pictures, editing, working on photography. I've taken 2,460 clients. In January, I added them up. And I've been a Nikon Ambassador for 6 months. So I've put a lot of time into this. And unfortunately, I'm going to start this talk with bad news. The bad news is that you're never going to find your voice. Your voice isn't something that's in the couch cushions where you left your car keys accidentally. It's not something that you're going to stumble upon on a summer night under a full moon. It's not in someone else's Instagram feed. Your one unique, never been seen before voice can't be found. It's got to be chiseled away like a marble statue. It comes with grit and time and years and so many ups and downs, so many ups and downs. But your unique voice is your fingerprint that separates you from millions and millions of other photographers. When you photograph from your unique perspective, it ensures longevity, and it connects you to your audience on a deeper level. I want to talk today about the difference between style and voice, because the two kind of go hand in hand, but they're similar, but there are a lot of differences. So style, my eyes aren't good enough to read this. This is your visual consistency. This is your use of lighting, your color palettes, your composition, the way that you post-process. These are the kind of techniques that you use when you're taking your images. And your voice is your personal vision. This is your beliefs. This is like your heart. This is the memories, the stories. These are the emotions that you bring to your work. So voice is inward and personal. It's your why. It answers the question, what are you saying through your art? So voice is really important. Style is outward and visible. This is your how. This is the techniques that you use to create your work. It's what makes your work instantly recognizable on a visual level. So the first and most important thing to start with when cultivating your voice is your why. I think it's so important with anything that we do to understand our why. And for me, my why has always been gratitude. I had a really rough childhood, and I picked up a camera when my son was born, and I started taking pictures of my children's lives. And I found that sometimes a photo can show you something that you might miss in the everyday mundane of your life. And what I noticed when I looked at the pictures of my children's lives growing up was the safety in their life and the love and the magic that they were growing up with. And I've just been so grateful for my camera. It's been such a healing gift to take pictures that have just shown me this magical life that I have and that my kids have today. So capturing the beauty and the light of their life is what I'm most grateful for. Gratitude is it's the thread that weaves all my work together. And that has spilled into my client work. When I first started, I had a brand new website, and someone that I admire and have looked up to my whole life, I showed them my website, and they looked at my website and laughed at it. And, we can receive criticism. You will receive criticism from sometimes yourself, sometimes someone you love, sometimes just some stranger. And I think the criticism, you can turn it into something that helps you and motivates you and gets you closer to your voice and your style as a photographer. But this particular time, I was filled with self-doubt, and it was at the very beginning of my career, and I really questioned whether what I was doing was even important. And Then about three months later, this happened. You guys hear? Can you hear it? Hold on, I'm going to go back. Can you hear that? Was there sound? We're going to try again.
I had a client come with a 1-year-old baby. It was a mom and a dad and a 1-year-old. It was a great photo shoot. We were out in the field and we captured this little boy with the backlight, and it's like a really beautiful photo session. 3 months after that, she called to tell me that her baby had died in his sleep. And that in her 1 year and 3 months of having this child, the only photos that she had of his life were, they were in the frame, hugging him and holding him, were the ones that I took that 1 hour that we had together. That is the thing that you grab when you have nothing else to grab in this world, is you look for photos. And I get to help celebrate in beautiful light all the love and all the hardship and all the beauty that's in your life. And that has been so profound, and just to know how much of an impact us photographers can make in even a single hour.
So your work matters. Knowing that is imperative to surviving on this journey and having longevity in this profession. I look to photographers like Amy Vitale, who are literally saving planet Earth with their photos, or Joe McNally, who travels the world creating masterpieces with light wherever he goes. And luckily, the world already has them. And the world only has one of you. So whether you're a landscape photographer, a sports photographer, a wedding photographer, a portrait photographer, a conservation photographer, your work matters. And that is the one thing that I think is really imperative to know as you continue to evolve and grow as a photographer. So, I just want to talk about the habits and mindset that help cultivate voice, that have helped me cultivate my voice. The first and most important is just leaning into what you love. For me, I love light, and I love big skies. I love nature. I love peace and magic and clean compositions. And you can see these things in my work, and you can see these things when you walk through my house. You can see these things in the style of how I write. It's just who I am. It's what I love. And I think that mastery begins when our love for the subject drives our growth. You know, if you're photographing from a place of love, not just what is cool right now or trendy right now or what you happen to love right now, but what you really love, what you loved 10 years ago, what you're still going to love 10 years from now. Photographing from that place of passion and love is going to sustain you, and it's going to ensure longevity. I get asked by students quite often if there's like a fast track to cultivating your voice. And one thing that I've seen be really profound, it's just a prompt that I've found to be really helpful. I've seen a lot of photography students have big aha moments when they've done this, is to just get out a piece of paper or a journal and jot down every detail of your perfect day. How would you spend your perfect day? Who would you be with? What would you wear? What would the light be like? Would there be music playing? Where would you be? What I've found so many times is that the themes within that perfect day are often the themes that people see within their work. And then they can like lean into that a little bit more. So here are some more questions you can ask. I don't know if you guys can see this. Feel free to take a screenshot. Every answer to these questions would describe my work. So sometimes when we're trying to cultivate our voice or we're trying to find our voice, you know, just getting to know what you love, what colors you're drawn to, what's your favorite time of day, what colors are repeated throughout your house, or what colors do you like to wear, any subjects or moods, do you like clean, are you messy? These kinds of things will show up in your work. So gaining inspiration from other artists is another really incredible thing that we have to help us grow. I've learned so much by learning from other artists and looking at other photographers, seeing how they use light and color and posing. And I think it It is important, though, to remember that it's sort of a tightrope that you have to walk. There's a balance beam there of, you don't want to fall into comparison or self-doubt, which can be so easy to do if you're really focused on just learning and getting inspired from other photographers. So something that I think is important is to study other art forms as well. I learned everything I know about side light from watching The Crown. That show has such an incredible use of directional side light. Wes Anderson is so brilliant at center compositions. Sometimes I'll read a Mary Oliver poem. She's my favorite poet. And I'll create an image just based on the feeling from that poem. So, looking at other art forms, paintings, fashion, we can learn so much. I was reading an article recently where the writer was talking about Bob Dylan and how Bob Dylan got so much inspiration from other songwriters and other songs. He'd just play songs over and over and over again, and then he'd be able to create his own song. And he said, it's really hard to read that screen. Bob Dylan's intention was extending the line, continuing the music he loved by internalizing it and turning it into his own words, thoughts, and stories. And I think that's the dream when we're gaining inspiration from other artists, to take in what they have to say and then make it our own and produce images that are completely our own. Practice, it just can't be overstated how important practice is. They say it takes 10,000 hours to become a master at a craft, and I really think that that's true. I think it takes repetition, shooting the things that you love over and over and over again to really learn and understand how to do it. Here's kind of a smattering of some of my images, and you can see a lot of repetition in my work. There's a lot of warmth. There's a lot of peace. There's connection, and I have some pictures of newborn babies in my studio and models out in the field and client work here and my husband in our barn, but there's some repetition throughout that I continually use because those are the things that I love. Challenging yourself is a huge way to continue to cultivate your voice. I think that, we can reach a certain level, we can get a certain amount of clients, or we can get to a certain place that we always dreamed we'd be, and then sort of get lazy and stop challenging ourselves. But I think continuing to strive and challenge yourself is so important, and there's always so much more to learn with photography. I feel like if I ever got to a place where I felt like I had learned it all, I hope that day never comes, and I hope that day, if it happens, I just put my camera down, because there's always so much more to learn. Taking classes. I sign up for at least 2 to 3 classes every January. January is like my month that I sort of give back to myself and try to learn new skills and techniques. And then when you've taken a lot of classes and you have something to share, you have something to give, to teach. I have learned so much from teaching. I feel like teaching really solidifies. You have to solidify what you know when you're teaching it to others. So if you've gotten to this point where you've taken a lot of classes, start teaching classes. Contests are a great way to kind of know where you stand. If you win something, it's amazing to have that pat on the back. If you don't, it's good information. It might push you to strive harder the next year. And conferences like this, I usually come home from these kinds of conferences with so many ideas and so much inspiration that I get on the plane and I just fill pages of a journal with all the new things that I want to try to start doing. So these kinds of conferences are incredibly inspiring. Critique is something that I feel like a lot of people don't do enough. Finding a friend or a colleague or a mentor who can help you and push you and challenge you and tell you where they think you could grow, that's a really important step in cultivating your voice. And then just unplugging, like putting the phone down, not posting. We're just told in this world and in this country that we have to post and share and create. But stopping. We're all artists, and I feel like artists need to take good care of themselves and need to take good care of their hearts. And that sometimes means stopping. It means traveling. It means hiking for me. So just knowing that sometimes if you're in a rut and you're not taking pictures, it's okay. That can be the medicine that gets you to create more images on the other side. Okay, so now we'll talk about cultivating your style. I feel like with anything in photography, it comes down to intention. Intention is such an important part of photography. And I think about photography as like a paintbrush, a painter. You start with a really big, thick brush, and you're just making these big, broad strokes. You're learning to shoot in manual mode. You're learning what aperture is. You're learning how to pose a human subject. You're learning how to talk to a subject. And as you get further along in your photography journey, your brush becomes finer and finer and smaller. Instead of posing the whole human body, you're thinking about the pinky. You're thinking about the exact shade of pink that you love. You're really looking at light and deciding which type of lens is going to be the best to handle the light for your story. So just thinking about what your intention is and knowing that that brush is going to get smaller, and no matter where you are in your journey, it's okay, it's part of the process. So here are some skills and techniques that I've used to cultivate my voice and my style. Lighting for emotion, not just lighting that's like pretty, but light that brings out emotion is really important to me. I think that light is the soul of an image. It creates the whole mood that an image has. This picture of my son would be kind of boring if it weren't for that backlight streaming in through the window. And one of my biggest aha moments in terms of learning light was when I decided, I realized light was really hard for me to learn. There's something about light it can be hard to see the light. But when you try not to look at the light and you just pay attention to the shadows and you look for the shadows, then you can start seeing the light. And when I started thinking of it that way, like, let me find the shadows in this image, I could start seeing the light more, and that changed my work. My work changed overnight when I started looking and paying attention to the shadows. So backlight is my favorite type of light. I use backlight all the time. I love how it separates the subject from the background and bathes them in a golden glow. It feels magical. This is a picture of my son and I in our backyard. I did a series where I measured his height in hugs. And this would be kind of really boring picture that wouldn't matter much, but the backlight really separates us and kind of makes this image feel like it was a magical moment. It's just because of that light. I love side light because it makes you feel like you could reach in and touch the subject. You feel like you could almost be there. There's a three-dimensionality with side light that's really powerful. Side light enhances texture. It enhances contrast and depth. It can feel really romantic and painterly. And even embracing deep, dark shadows can feel peaceful and whimsical. And hard light, I love hard light. I feel like hard light is powerful. It feels so warm. In this image, the hard shadows really helped draw the eye exactly where I wanted the eye to go. I wanted all the attention to be on her eyes and on her face, and those hard shadows really sculpt it, telling the eye where I want it to land. And soft light lets your eye kind of travel all throughout the frame. Soft light feels really soft. It feels gentle. So, all light is beautiful. I think it just comes down to intention and what's your story? What are you trying to say with the light? Any type of light can be effective and beautiful. Depth of field is a really fun way to add like intimacy or to make a viewer feel like they're peeking in on a moment. I feel like using depth of field can feel cozy sometimes. Here's a typical image that I take a lot where I'm using a wide angle or a long focal length with a wide aperture, and I'm separating my subject from the background. This longer focal length and wider aperture, it can make the background appear larger and closer. It also adds this dreamy depth of field that I have always just loved. This is kind of the opposite image. This was taken with a 24 1.8 and shot at f/16. So instead of shooting wide open, I'm shooting with a shallow depth of field, which gives that sun flare, and it sort of tells the story of nature and my subject are all kind of intertwined. It's a story more about nature with the subject. So in this picture, I shot this with a 24 millimeter lens at f/16, creating that sun flare. And again, this picture, because of my lens choice and my exposure, is telling a story of a fly fisherman, but it's also nature is the main subject too. And right afterwards, I got my 85 1.2 out, and I shot this at f/2.0, which really isolated my subject and tells a different story. This story is more about the fly fisherman and his relationship with, in that morning fly fishing. It's not as much about the environment. Here I used a 24 millimeter 1.8, and I shot this at f/14 to get that sun flare. And again, it's kind of a story of, the environment and my subject, where here, the only thing that I changed was my aperture. I shot this at 2.0, so the depth of field is a lot more intense. There's a lot more separation between my subject and the background. The sun is more of like a dreamy haze. And both work. It just depends on, your voice and your style and the story that you're trying to tell. Here, I really wanted to isolate my subject's face. I didn't care if both her hands were out of focus. I wanted the background to fall into just a dreamy blur. And so I shot wide open with a longer focal length, and I just really focusing on her face. Where here, I didn't want dreamy depth of field. I wanted every single bit of the frame in focus, because every single bit of the frame mattered to the story. So, just making your choices based on what your story is, and using depth of field to enhance your story is just like a helpful technique. So composition, this is your roadmap, telling the viewer how to come into the frame and where to travel around the frame. I use rule of thirds a lot. I think rule of thirds lets the eye kind of travel around and then land on the subject while kind of incorporating other elements into the frame. It's just a natural place for the eye to land. So I use rule of thirds almost all the time in my work. I also love to incorporate negative space and scale. I think this can immediately create the feeling of awe or wonder, love for nature. And then layering adds depth and complexity, and it creates a three-dimensionality. I like to get really low and include foreground, middle, and background. And sometimes I'll lay down on the ground to include some depth of grass or flowers in the foreground to really help kind of bring my viewer through the frame. And here, this image was feeling really flat. I was just photographing this woman on a horse on the road, but by finding this tree to shoot through and shooting through all the greenery, it added just like a layer of coziness and makes it feel a little more three-dimensional. And then here I was using center composition and really tried to balance my subject where she was weighted on both sides, which kind of makes it feel harmonious. So, again, it doesn't matter. There's not like one right way to compose. It all can be effective and beautiful if, chosen with intention. So color. Color sets the tone before the viewer even knows what they're looking at. Color can make you feel something immediately. Claude Monet said that color is his day-long obsession, joy, and torment. And I've found that to be true the longer I've been on this photography journey, and the more fine-tuned my brush has gotten, the more picky I am about the colors. I used to just see green as green, and now I have like a particular way I like to handle my greens. It's kind of that way with every color for me. So warm tones can feel energizing and passionate and warm and happy. They can feel playful and whimsical, while cool tones can feel peaceful and tranquil and make the viewer think about the beauty of nature. And then using contrasting tones like golds and blues or reds and greens brings immediate contrast and immediate depth to the image. Using blues and oranges feels immediately really cinematic. Here I used red and green. This image already had a lot of contrast because of the light, but using red and green made it have immediate contrast even more. And then here I used monochrome. I used just pink on pink on pink. So I wanted to make images that felt really feminine and kind of whimsical. And so repeating pinks did that there. And then here I repeated gold. And by repeating gold, the images feel just super warm. So post-processing is, another tool that we have that amplifies our voice. And I feel like it's a bridge between what you saw and what you want to remember, or what you want your viewers to look at when they see the photo. I don't think post-processing is a crutch. It's just a way to extend your vision. So here's a straight out of camera shot. And the edit. And another one. And the edit. It's warmer. I've cleaned it up a little bit. And another one. And the edit. And I think it's important to know that there is a journey, and we're all on it, and to enjoy it. Here, I'm going to show you guys some embarrassing pictures. Here's a picture at the towards the beginning of my photography journey, and I thought this picture was like really good. And I look at it now and I see all kinds of things that I wouldn't do now. But I also see my voice in this picture. I see that, like my love for my kids and my love for our animals is here. And here's a more current one where I've used some style. This is a picture of my dad carving something with my son's hands. And I also remember taking this and being like, wow, I'm so creative. And here's something with a little more style and more intention with color and lighting and composition. Here's one of my first client sessions. You could see my voice in there. I like it dreamy. I'm like trying to capture something that feels magical, but I just didn't quite have the skills yet. And here's some current client work where, I'm really more intentional with my lighting and my posing and everything. So cultivating your voice, I think, is the intersection of passion, persistence, and intentional practice. And you can look at a photographer's work and see that they, call them talented. But I don't feel like it's talent. When I look at a photographer's body of work, I see time. It just takes so much time. So I just want to end with a quick quote that I love, and I'm just going to read it. Time is the only thing that matters. Hours spent hammering on your craft, years spent committed to your mission, moments spent enjoying your progress. There is no hiding from time. It separates those who pretend and those who do. It weeds out the weak and rewards those chasing mastery. Show up despite the doubt. Focus despite the distractions. Believe despite the noise. Act despite the uncertainty, because time can be your best friend, but it only works for you when you do the work. Time is the ultimate test of what type of person you are. If you are who you say you are, if you're fully committed to your ambitions and responsibilities, or if you just put up a front to keep your potential at bay. Nothing happens, and then everything happens. But for everything to happen, you must be the type of person capable of not only entering the arena, but staying in the arena. And I'm done. Thank you, guys.
Ladies
Thanks for coming
and
and
gentlemen,
smiling.
D'Ann Boal, Nikon Ambassador.